I would like to start by giving a Grace Yashikoyach to the Ma'arganin, especially for Lahagdil Torah La'adira, for giving me the koyach and the schus to be Meifetz Torah and the Feshluchim throughout the world. The title for the Shir today, and perhaps over the next 2 weeks, is about the Jewish home. So I do have to clarify it, because when we discuss this, the Jewish home is a very big title, and I want to clarify that there are certain things that Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach I hope to discuss, but there are many items that are included in the Jewish home that I understand, and I know that over the shiurim over the past months were discussed, and are not included in the next, won't be included in the next 2 weeks of shiurim. And we have to stay focused and know what our target of our discussion is. So the Jewish home that we won't be talking about, the Taras HaMashpacha and Chinuch and Kedusha and Tznius, the mumchim in that field, which is an expertise that you need to have a special expertise. I understand and I know that many shluchim, many rabbanim spoke about that. We will stay focused on, as the advertisement was, on the physical, the structure of the Jewish home, the binyan hagashmi, and try to touch upon what the halacha speaks about the physical Jewish home, how to build a house, and where to build a house, hilchos shchenim, the structure of a home, and so and so. And obviously, Choshen Mishpat is hundreds of halachas, Nezikim and Shchenim and all these dinim are very complex. So to try to fit it into an hour or two is kind of impossible. So we're going to try to do Rashi Prakim, and as the Rebbe would always quote the pasuk, B'chinas ten lechacham v'yechkam b'id, and perhaps in today's shir it would actually be a lot of agadata, a lot of inyanim to draw people into this conversation, and maybe next time there will be more of the halacha, and we'll try to zero in at least in 1 or 2 or 3 items so we should have a davar shalom in a couple of halachas. Some of the halachic inyanim that I want to make clear that we will not talk about, even in the physical aspect, which are very complicated, and you have to have shiurim just on those topics itself. When you're choosing where to live, obviously, you know that Gemara tells us that there is a special mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, La'ilam yadar adam b'Eretz Yisrael, even if it's in a city where it's not Roiv Yehudim, over living in Chutz La'aretz. Why some people are makpid to do so and why others are not? So that's a machlokes, a poskim machlokes, and there's many discussions about that, and that's something that's a whole topic for itself. But I'm just, when you're dealing with the issue of building a home, where to choose to live, so I want to tell you what we're not going to discuss too, because that's a whole topic for itself. Another thing that I have to clarify is I'm going to discuss the halachas as it's brought in Shulchan Aruch. Obviously, there is the concept of Eis Lasis Lashem Heferus Seresecha, meaning to say that in Yonim of Mesiras Nefesh, in Yonim to Uislesh a fire, sometimes when there's we're here to save a situation, there is a Tzav Ashah where Heferus Seresecha, you're here to help. And in many cases, where the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe sent Shluchim to situations where a lot of the inyanim that are discussed in Shulchan Aruch are not exactly what the Rebbe would send people to cities, even though I was told la'achreina that many shluchim were asked in neighborhoods when they were choosing where to go, what neighborhood should they choose to establish their Chabad house or their community, and the Rebbe actually led them to a place where there is closer to a shul, etc., etc. But I'm gearing it more to advice when you have somebody that's coming to you to ask you what is the Torah perspective, where a person should live as he's becoming more frum, etc. What does Torah say as a community? Not somebody who's going on shlichus on Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh has its own set of laws. Yeharik Val Yaver. It's a different ball game. It's Eis Lasis Lashem Meifeiru Seresecha. It's well known. The Pirush from the Kotzker Rebbe on the Mishnah have a Goyla Limkaim Torah. The literal translation is that a person has to go to Golus and to find a Makom Torah. He has to leave his house to go to Makom Torah. Whereas the Kotzker Rebbe actually translated into what we might call it as a Lubavitcher word. He says, have a Goyla. Everywhere you go in Golus, flip it around. Make Golus every place a Makom Torah. And that perhaps is what the Rebbe wants us to do. We go anywhere we are and we make it a Makom Torah. But again, the dry letter of the law, when people are asking us advice, and we have to guide people where to choose, how halacha, or people are looking to move as youngsters into a new neighborhood, what is the guidelines, what Torah tells us where and who and what and when. Another thing, as I mentioned before, Choshen Mishpat is hundreds of simanim. When you buy a house, there's the Dinei Kinyonim, there's Dinei Hasagas Gvul. Hasagas Gvul is not only once the house was already bought. If you know that somebody is about to offer a price, he's negotiating a deal with a real estate agent. There's ganz nadinim of ani hamahapich b'charada. There's ganz nadinim of sections in Choshen Mishpat that have to be dealt with. That's not something that you could discuss on one foot. So we are going to zero in on specifics, and hopefully we'll clarify specific halachas. All right. After the first Hakdama, let me get to my second Hakdama. Poischim b'dvar malchus. The Rebbe's kapitel that we started saying Yud Aleph Nissen, which is Hallel, a continuation in Hallel, we say Hashamayim Shamayim LaHashem V'Haaretz Nasan Livnei Adam. The Eibishter, the Shamayim is LaHashem, Ruchnius, spiritual things. V'Haaretz Nasan Livnei Adam. The Eibishter gave Livnei Adam Haaretz. So the Gemara comes in Yevamos Daf Samach Gimel, and the Gemara says, Kol Adam she'ein loy karka, any person that does not have karka, einay Adam. Because the Pasuk says, Ha'aretz nasan livnei Adam. What does it mean, ein loy karka? So, the simple Gemara means, avodas ha-karka, he has to develop karka. It's interesting that in the Sikha, in Parshas Miketz, Tafshin Yudches, in Sichas Kodesh, the Rebbe writes, the Rebbe says like this, Vegin bayis, the Rebbe doesn't say about karka. Vegin bayis, concerning a home, Zak di Gemara, Kol Adam she'ein loy bayis, einay Adam. Azoi bringt sich the Lashon in Chassidus. In Chassidus, when they quote this Gemara, when they quote the statement, they say it concerning a home. In Gemara state the Lashon, Kol Adam she'ein loy karka einay Adam. Aber in Chassidus bringt sich the Lashon bayis. Und der Maker of them, says the Rebbe, is the Tosfos on this Gemara in Yevamos. What's the point of a karka? What's the point of owning a karka? You might think it's to develop and have farming. No. Tosfos over there in Dibra Maschil She'ein, Tosfos says, karka livnois olav. To own real estate is to build, to own land is to build a house on it. Zok the Tzemach Tzedek, as the Makar HaMaimer Kol Adam Bayis einay adam is the einzige mocker der Tosfos Hanal. The statement that a person has to own real estate, a home, is this statement in the Gemara Yevamos Samach Gimel, Kol Adam she'ein le karka einay adam, really means Kol Adam she'ein le bayis einay adam. So now we see that owning real estate, owning a possession, a home, makes you an adam. That's the statement of the Gemara in Gemara Yevamos. The Gemara in Brachos comes along about this pasuk. The pasuk, the Gemara says again, Hashamayim shamayim laHashem va'aretz nasan levnei adam. The Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph says, Rabbi Levi Rami. Rabbi Levi has a stira. Ksiv, in one hand it says, laHashem ha'aretz u'malaya. Hashem is in control of the whole world. Ha'aretz u'malaya. Everything, even the aretz too. And now you say, va'aretz nasan levnei adam. And for the Gemara, loy kasha. That's not a stira. Kan koydem bracha, kan la'acher bracha. That's where the Gemara knows you have to make a bracha on food. That before, if you're making food, if you're making bracha on eating food, then it's ha'aretz nasan levnei adam. The Eibishter gave us the right, levnei adam, to be part of aretz if you make a bracha. La'achar bracha, it's nasan levnei adam. Koydem bracha, not. If you look a statement, a couple of lines before that statement, there's another statement in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kol hanena me'olam hazeh b'loi bracha. Anybody who has any benefit from any part of the world, because la'Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya, everything in this world belongs to Hashem. Who are we to take something that belongs to Him and use it? Anybody who uses any part of this world, olam hazeh b'loi bracha, it's a bad thing. So the Gemara says, "My takante." How could you fix up a blemish that you did? Yelech etzel chacham. He should go to a chacham. So the Gemara says it's too late. It's already a done deal. He made the damage already. So the Gemara says it's not after the fact. Was heißt Yelech etzel chacham? Yelech etzel chacham means that a person before anything, Yelech etzel chacham yilamdenu brachos. A person before he has to eat, he should go learn Hilchas Brachos. Kedei shelayavay lidei me'ilah. So he should not use something that belongs to Hashem. He should know, do I have permission to use it? So if it is in food, that you have to go to a chacham to know what Hilchas Brachos is, so he should not be lavay lidei me'ilah. The same is in Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya. Anything in the world. Anything in the world means to say, ha'aretz nasan levnei adam. The bias, kol she'ein le bias einay adam. You have to go, etzel chacham, you have to go to the Shulchan Aruch and see what Shulchan Aruch says, yelech etzel chacham v'yilmaid hilchas brachos. What's the hamshacha, what Torah says, what are you allowed to do? What is the Torah tell you to do? Vu megman lebim, vu tarmenish lebim. What is asur al pi Torah? What is mutar al pi Torah? And the Gemara says in Baba Kama. The Gemara says in Baba Kama Daf Lamed, and a quote that the Rebbe quotes at many places: "Hai man the boy lemevi chasida." One who wants to be a chassid, yikayim mila de brachas. And we all know that the Gemara brings three opinions. Either he should fulfill Mila de Brachas. Mila de Brachas means Hilchas Brachas, or Islan Hilchas Brachas. Or Yekayim Mila de Chasidusa. Mila de Chasidusa is the quote that the Rebbe would always quote about Pirkei Avos. He should learn Pirkei Avos. He should do Lefnim Meshuras Adin. If you want to be a chassid, you should do Lefnim Meshuras Adin. Or Yekayim Milan de Nezikin. he should fulfill Milad and Nezikin. Milad and Nezikin is he should be careful, Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra. He should make sure not to damage, not to harm anybody. Chasida, to be a true chassid, you have to be mekayim these three things. And it's brought in Sifrei Drush that the pasuk says, Even shleima v'tzedek yilecha. So in Sifrei Drush says, Even is a Rosh Tevis. Even is a Rosh Tevis. Avos, brachos, and nezikin. If you dus durchgelent, avos, brachos, and nezikin, and you study this well, and you live a life in these ways, tzedek yilecha, vet zayin gut. Story is told that Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik once said that his Zayda, Reb Chaim Brisk, was he was Mekurev, he was Karev to Chassidus Chabad, and he said that he was closer to Chassidus Chabad than most people thought. And he said he once heard that he said about a certain Rebbe that you could see that when he says a bracha, he's so engrossed in his bracha that he pashat cries from the Hisrakshus. And he explained like this: what did Chassidus really want? And what did especially Chassidus Chabad want? So he quoted this Gemara. When the Gemara says, Hai man de boy lemevi chasida, lekayim mili de brachas, the Gemara did not only mean lekayim mili de brachas, fulfill hilchas brachas. Every 5-year-old kid in yeshiva, we teach them, you have to say shak only a b'dvari before you eat a candy. What's the chiddush? That Hai man de boy lemevi chasida. So he interpreted a very nice chasidish pshat. The Gemara is saying that the kavanah is that a yid has to say a bracha as evi a chassid zakt a bracha. Mehevi chasida mitay chesrakshus. So us shluchim, us chassidim, when it comes to these halachas, we have to be chassida. We have to be even in these halachas, especially these halachas. Lifnim mishuras hadin, we have to be mehevi chasida. We have to do it careful. Okay, this is all Divrei Hakdama, 21 minutes of Divrei Hakdama. Abba Yisai, I always try to say that from all the religions that we find, it's interesting that the Yiddish religion is actually the most down-to-earth, the most realistic one. I personally bring a raya from this, that we find that Yom Kippur, the holiest of days, mincha time, for whatever reason, Shulchan Aruch tells us, the halacha tells us, that the Kriyas HaTorah that we should read on mincha is arayas. Why? So it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, practical reason. Because the halacha says, Mirfashtein dan Yetzer Hara. Halacha says, we talk to the Yetzer Hara, and then the Yetzer Hara, Nafshe Shel Adam, the Yetzer Hara has a very big issue. This is what he makes people deal with. So if so, Af Yom Kippur, on Mincha, that's what we want you to read about. And there is a beautiful Tosfos Yontif in Pirkei Avos, when it says that when it speaks about the Nisim, and it speaks about the Nisim that the Kohen Gadol had in the Beis HaMikdash, it says, a gewaldige Nes that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohen Gadol did not become a Keri b'Yom Kippurim. Stellt sich the Shaila. The Kohen Gadol did not become a Keri b'Yom Kippurim? The Kohen Gadol? Yom Kippur? Achas b'Shana? The Kohen Gadol? And the answer, which the Tosfos Yontif says, the Tosfos Yontif in the Mishnayos says, Hainu hach. The Kohen Gadol. B'Yom HaKippurim. The Yetzer Hara knows that too. And after Lachas, he comes to fight them. The Kol HaGavoya B'Yoser, the more Kedusha there is, the more the Yetzer Hara comes in there. So the fact that the Kohen Gadol Vertnish Tamei Af Yom Kippur is a grace on this. So this is a raya that the Yiddish halacha, the Yiddish hira, the Yiddish Torah is down to earth. So here we're going to talk very practical things. And I'm going to speak about some Yesodis in how to choose a neighborhood based on what the Gemara says. And some of the things I'm just going to show you, an interesting observation. You see how it's quoted in the Gemara. And the Rambam, perhaps you're going to say the Rambam as a doctor and the Rambam as a Paisik. It's interesting. I didn't see too many Mefarshim explaining why the Rambam did this. There is a Reshima that the Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis makes what a person has to look for before he chooses which neighborhood to live in, what has to be in that neighborhood. And then the Rambam also makes the list, but the Rambam makes the list different than the Gemara. And I didn't see too many Mefarshim explaining why the Rambam makes the list any different. So here is a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, Kol ir she'ein ba asara dvarim halalu, ein Talmid Chacham rashai loder b'seicha. Any city that doesn't have these 10 things, a Talmid Chacham is not allowed to live there. Now, again, this is a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, and the Rambam, it's in Hilchos Deis, Perik Daled, I think, Halacha Chav Gimel. Now, the Mefarshim say that a Talmid Chacham is not allowed to live there. Why is it only a Talmid Chacham? So a Talmid Chacham is sort of an Isser. For everybody else, it's not an Isser, but it's just a practical advice. Doesn't make sense for you to live there when you hear what the list is.